think it's time to begin. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for taking some time out of your Friday to join us. Welcome to this installment of our VWEC Expert Series, in which we ask educational professionals to share with us their experiences and their insights into ways that virtual worlds can be used to engage students. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce a clear expert in the field, John O'Connor, who will talk to us about developing learning communities of practice in the Metaverse. In 2009, John O'Connor started teaching an award-winning higher education class in Second Life. He has taught the module most semesters since then, teaching in collaboration with colleagues in Dublin and universities in Ohio and Turkey has given participants a unique intercultural experience. John served as Dean of the College of Arts and Tourism at Technological University Dublin in Ireland from 2012 to 2021 and is currently leading the university's team in developing a European University of Technology with 7 partners across Europe. Because we are using Speakeasy, we ask members of the audience to hold their questions until the end of the talk, including in text chat. In addition, please know that this presentation will be recorded and streamed on YouTube. You can find the stream at the address that we will insert. One final comment. Brayla will be sending a note card with a bibliography from John to each of you. We hope this gives you additional insight into what he is talking about and what he is doing. So, without further delay, John, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Meryl, for the introduction and your support in preparing this talk. I'm delighted to be here this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on your time zone. I need to make an apology in advance. I'm suffering the after effects of COVID with a lingering cough, so please excuse any mid-presentation spluttering that you might hear. The first slide blends my real face with my avatars, as I made the decision on joining Second Life not to develop an alter ego. I should start by acknowledging a certain level of discomfort with the idea of an expert. In truth, I am continually learning and being surprised, amazed, and delighted by the new opportunities thrown up by life. An expert is really just someone who has been hanging around for a long time and may have some experiences that can be usefully shared with others. So in that context, I am happy to share some of what I have learned on my journey so far, and if it is of interest or has some value, so much the better. To begin, a quick review of how I arrived here. My academic discipline is visual communication design, which I studied for my undergraduate degree, before completing a master's in what was then called multimedia, some 10 years later. That was in the early 1990s, so the technology was a little less accessible than it is now. The experience eventually led me out of the professional design sector, where I had established a successful business, and into academia, a decision I have never regretted. Joining TU Dublin, as Meryl mentioned in her introduction, I was appointed head of the School of Art and Design, and 12 years later became a director of the university and dean of the College of Arts and Tourism, where one of my key roles was to develop our new arts building and ensure a smooth transition for students, faculty and staff. I now lead TU Dublin's engagement in an initiative to create a European University of Technology with 7 partners across the continent.
Yeah.
Slide 2 shows the university's new campus in Dublin city centre at Grange Gorman.
I tried calling him, I couldn't reach it. He didn't answer.
However, my interests have always been in supporting isolated or marginalised communities by harnessing available and accessible technology. An early foray into this area came with a rather unusual request from one of my fine art lecturers, Bernadette Burns, about 22 years ago.
Okay, well,
She had a house on a small island off the southwest coast of Ireland in the Atlantic Ocean. Sherkin Island has a population of about 120, but it was home to a very dynamic and engaged community. They were keen to explore the possibility of establishing a full undergraduate degree program on the island, so I set up and led a team to explore the potential. Not only did it seem rather remote a possibility, but it was also a massive ambition for a small community at the time. However, we soon found that the island had some useful resources and experience. In addition to an appropriate workspace in the community hall, there was a reliable ISDN-supported video conferencing system, a small library, and a cohort of leaders who were dedicated, determined to succeed, and very pleasant to work with. And the community was well connected to the local government network and even to national representatives. Informal arts classes, along with a variety of craftwork activity, had long been a feature of island life. But what drew my attention in particular was the flexible nature of life on the island. There was a distinct community model in terms of survival. Individuals were skilled in many areas and could turn their attention to fishing, farming, boat building or tourism as the year progressed while demand ebbed and flowed. My decision to engage with Sherkin Island was based on the belief that a genuine partnership would benefit both the university and the community. We had something to learn from each other. It was important to recognise each other's skills and areas of expertise to ensure we all knew our practical limitations and our capacity for commitment. Slide 3 is an image of students on Sherkin Island engaged in fieldwork. Within a year, we had developed a pilot programme made up of credit-bearing modules, and sometime afterwards we launched a fully fledged 4-year undergraduate degree programme in visual art, combining remote and face-to-face delivery. The project injected much needed economic, social and cultural activity into the community and continues this very important role in the island today. This has always been recognised by local and national authorities to provide financial support to the island. The course also provides a space for innovation in pedagogy and education technology, and it gives the university an opportunity to devise and test new approaches to remote teaching for the arts. However, issues particular to the cohort of students also emerge. For example, in the main, the course recruits mature students from a wide catchment area of local islands and the surrounding mainland, who have had some experience of making art, but frequently have not had to write, particularly in an academic style, perhaps for many years. Producing papers throughout the course and a dissertation in the final year has sometimes proved difficult. For me, however, this is a challenge to the university, not just the student. Our role is to facilitate our students. The purpose of papers and dissertations is usually to demonstrate the ability to think critically and contribute to debate in the arts. In addition to providing support for students to improve their writing skills, I believe we should meet challenges presented by them as opportunities to explore an alternative to writing. Critical thought can be demonstrated in the form of sound recording, video documentation, and so on. Slide 4 shows the graduation ceremony and conferring of awards on the island, which is a celebration for the whole population and has one of our most unusual academic processions. The project has received support from several state organisations over the years in recognition of its importance to this community and the potential to harness it for other communities, and some more on that later on. In 2020, my colleague Glenn Loughran, who is course leader in Sherkin Island now, launched a master's degree programme in collaboration with the locally based West Cork Arts Centre, close to Sherkin Island and the other islands in Roaring Water Bay. This, of course, coincided with the global pandemic, so we opted for the use of Oculus Quest headsets and an application called Spatial, with which we had recently been experimenting. There was nothing to lose. The country was in lockdown, so it was virtual reality or nothing. This proved, indeed, to be an exciting and massively informative opportunity. It's amazing how necessity can focus the mind. Staff and students persisted for the academic year and produced significant work that addressed both the physical and virtual environments in the context of the Anthropocene and informed by the philosophy of archipelagic thought. We shared the experience with colleagues in Europe through our membership of the European League of Institutes of the Arts, hosting a 2-day conference in the virtual archipelago that was created during the year. Slide 5 is an image from the conference showing delegates attending via Oculus headsets. We were able to host over 60 participants who joined us in Spatial via Oculus and enjoy an engaging series of presentations and discussions in a reasonably convincing simulation of a live conference. The event closed with a genuine virtual art exhibition that visitors were encouraged to explore in much the same way as they would attend an opening in real life. Slide 6. We can see the exhibition of work made by the students on the master's programme. The catalyst for all this exploration was my experience of teaching in Second Life. I discovered the platform in 2006 or 2007, and once I had gotten over my initial amazement at seeing Neil Stephenson's Metaverse from Snow Crash come to life, I began to explore and make friends. It wasn't too long before I realized the potential for higher education in particular. I applied for a university grant to develop a module and received funding which was never actually used, and also met a colleague, Lux Daiichi, who came on board to co-teach with me. The real benefit of the grant was that it accorded formal recognition of the activity. When the module was developed, it was a relatively simple matter to have it validated as an elective module. Slide 7 shows the first participants in the 2009 pilot module in our Second Life seminar room. And such was my trepidation that I had decided to run the pilot offering for academic staff before imposing it on real students. About 12 people, lecturers, learning development officers, and technical support staff took part. This was before voice existed in SL, so all teaching was done through local chat in text. It was a success, so we decided to offer the module and gave it the title, Virtual Environments is One Life Enough. The first students joined in the fall 2009 semester, and we haven't really looked back since. So this is probably the right time to describe some of the principles underpinning the course. Firstly, it was decided that everything about the module would take place in the virtual environment. There would be no preparatory meetings in real-life labs, no introducing students to the environment, and as little formal technical support as possible. One of the module learning outcomes is to develop the participants' ability for independent learning. And after all, if I could teach myself how to use Second Life, why shouldn't I have the same expectation of my students? This strategy proved successful. Not only did the students figure out Second Life for themselves, they also helped and supported each other. In the early days, it took a few weeks before they were comfortable in the environment and acquired sufficient fluency to inhabit Second Life with some degree of comfort. Nowadays, the new students are already waiting for me in class with voice activated and ready to get started from the first meeting in Second Life. They have little difficulty adapting to new digital environments and experiences, and are well used to learning as they go. Slide 8 shows Sitar Madonna talking to the class about teamwork. The second principle is the pedagogical approach is firmly rooted in constructivist learning theory. Knowledge is not given to students by experts, but rather we construct our own understanding in the context of previous experience, social context, hands-on practice, and through making mistakes with subsequent self-reflection under the guidance of a teacher or facilitator. This approach seems to suit the virtual world, where the traditional lecture, a little like the one I am delivering now, can be somewhat flat, particularly for young undergraduates. To retain the attention needed to construct knowledge in this kind of environment, it is necessary for participants to be actively engaged with the topic and with each other. Thirdly, a principle that had been well established with the Sherkin Island project was adopted. No observers, only participants. The experience of participation is rich, and it supports deep learning, but it also requires a certain vulnerability. If you remain within your comfort zone, you are not learning. Education is predicated on the willingness to move outside familiarity and engage with the unknown. This can be challenging and uncomfortable, so it is important that all participants feel they are in a secure and supportive environment that allows learners and teachers to develop a sense of community. Ivan Wenger recognized the importance of communities of practice and later learning communities at the end of the last century. The basic tenet is that a community made up of those ranging from experts to novices develops into a cohesive group that demonstrates continuity and longevity due to the bonds that develop and the understanding that is constructed together, resulting in mutual support and deeper learning. Slide 9 is a photo of students visiting the community virtual library with VAL Librarian. The fourth principle is the flipped classroom model, which was adopted. Participants are given reading and viewing material in advance, along with a set of questions to be considered before the class meeting. During the class in Second Life, I facilitate an informed and engaged debate. This format proved to be more successful than the formal lecture and helped ensure that students sitting at computers in their bedrooms or other informal spaces were less likely to become bored and drift away. Not only do the students engage with the discussion, but it was also noticeable from early on that many participants found it easier to do so in the virtual world than the more formal classroom setting in real life. The informality of virtual worlds, in conjunction with the slight distance created by the technology, seems to relieve much of the nervousness and reticence often present in real-life classrooms. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, I wanted to engage fully with the vibrant communities already forming in Second Life. Therefore, I made arrangements for the virtual classroom to be situated in a virtual campus in virtual Dublin, one of the most dynamic of the early cities in Second Life. Lots of visitors were attracted by the ambience of the city and came to hear the music, attend storytelling evenings, concerts, parades, and conferences. The city was well managed and policed, which made it a safe environment with a strong sense of community support, providing a reassuring place for the students while introducing them to some very interesting residents. This led me also to other communities, such as Virtual Ability Island, which began hosting field trips for the class each semester from spring 2015. Slide 10 shows a joint exhibition of students' work and Virtual Ability Island artists' work at Cape Able Gallery on Virtual Ability Island in 2017. Indeed, one of the remarkable features of Second Life is the willingness of residents to volunteer their time and expertise on interesting projects. From the beginning, a variety of guest speakers addressed the class on a regular basis. Pam Rambler, the founder of Virtual Dublin, Elfé Pinkdot, host of a weekly jazz show Coffee and Pajamas, and Carly Charlton, the entrepreneurial owner of a chain of homeware stores across Second Life called Easy Living, are just three of those who are no longer resident in Second Life, but contributed hugely to the course. Sidearm Madonna has been a supporter from the very beginning, not only sharing his expertise in team working, but also providing ceaseless encouragement and advice, student support, and practical organisation support. And Gentle Heron has hosted the students at Virtual Ability Island every semester, where her team share their experiences of Second Life and real life, offering insights that would otherwise be difficult to come by. VAL Librarian introduces the community's virtual library, as shown in this slide, and shares insights from her research in meta-literacy, meta-modernism, and digital citizenship. Her first fully fledged in-world collaboration with Akron University in Ohio also emerged from Dublin. Slide 11 is from a final student project presentation at Akron's Second Life campus in 2016. Dudley Turner, who was Dean of the College of Creative and Professional Arts, and I met in Second Life and then later in real life at a conference in Dublin, where we decided to join forces and co-teach the module, bringing our students together. This continued for 4 years, from 2014, and the intercultural experience added significantly to the participants' experience while reshaping the module. It also resulted in added value, as Dudley, Locks and I collaborated on conference presentations and academic papers describing our methodology. 2 years ago, a new partnership emerged when I met two people who have helped reshape the offering again. Agua from Cha University in Turkey and Wisdom Seeker, the founder of Whole Brain Health on Inspiration Island, and I came together to develop the International Student Project about 2 years ago. Slide 12 is one of the student project presentations at Inspiration Island just this summer. This brings students from both universities together to work on team projects at the International Student Centre in Inspiration Island. The rich environment and community of experienced teachers and facilitators means the participants, who come from a range of arts and business disciplines, also have the opportunity to take a Masters of the Metaverse program, developed and delivered by Tuya Hines of Whole Brain Health and certified by both universities. This is an optional offering during the semester that allows students interested in exploring the metaverse to develop new projects, carry out postgraduate research, and provide technical and pastoral support to students in following semesters. The intercultural experience is also broadened because, in addition to the Turkish and Irish participants, our international exchange students come from many other countries in both continents. Slide 13 is the class photo taken at the end of the most recent course earlier this year. So, what have I noticed over the last 12 or 13 years of virtual teaching? When I started in Second Life, the platform was at the height of its popularity. Many of you who were around at the time will remember the endless newspaper articles describing how virtual worlds were the future, along with television interviews with residents who claimed to be earning a good living in Second Life. The academic world was also excited about the potential and began to explore this new future with interest. We won a National Teaching Innovation Award for the module in 2010 and an international award at the Learning Without Frontiers Festival in London a year later. In the intervening years, however, public interest has waned somewhat, but educational activity continues and is now increasing since the global pandemic demonstrated the importance of online learning. In the first half of the last decade, students enjoyed the novelty of coming to a class in a virtual environment, from their bedrooms, living rooms, or internet cafes. They were equally amazed and intrigued by the possibilities, and while it took them a few weeks to acclimatise, with a little encouragement, they were quite willing to engage. Participants also enjoyed working on teams and collaborating online. A year or two before the pandemic, I began to notice that students had much less difficulty engaging with the platform. They all arrived for the first class, ready to get going immediately. The current generation is clearly able to navigate new digital spaces and learn how to use the tools much more easily than their predecessors. In the early stages of lockdown, students reported that the nature of Second Life was much preferable to that of Zoom and other video-based classes they were attending. Being present and immersed in the environment of a virtual world was a relief from the flat experience and the intrusive nature of video. Identifying with their avatars afforded a more genuine experience of engagement than they had expected. This was also reported by participants on the master's course using Oculus and Spatial. By the time those students met in VR for the first class, they had been living in isolation for some months, so the excitement of meeting in a lifelike environment with lifelike avatars was unexpected and intriguing to them. Discovering that their avatars could shake hands produced an emotional response that was truly joyful. Looking back over these projects, I realized that building partnerships was fundamental to success. For a partnership to work, it is necessary to have clarity around some key issues. When we embarked on our collaboration with the Sherkin Island community, we partnered with a formal organisation on the island, the Sherkin Island Development Society, which was an elected socio-political organisation representing the community and recognised by the state. Some of the basic principles we agreed from the outset were essential to the success of the venture as it developed: meeting challenges and difficulties, compromising, and building consensus. Those principles included equality of authority with clear delineation of responsibility, mutual respect, the creation of genuine opportunities to share knowledge and learn from one another, regular contact, and openness, so that building trust was recognized as a required activity. A very important catalyst in all of this was the original lecturer in my school at the time who proposed the project. Bernadette was a trusted member of the island community and of our school. Having a foot in both camps, so to speak, was invaluable when it came to navigating the inevitable disagreements that emerged from time to time. A decade later, following the success of the partnership with Sherkin Island, I was approached by the local authority of another county further north on the Atlantic coast to develop a similar programme. A lecturer in sculpture in our fine art department was from a well-known and respected local family, so it seemed as if we had the basis of a new partnership. Unfortunately, despite considerable planning over the course of a year, the project failed to take off. Reflecting on this later, I realized that the missing ingredient was community trust. The political motive behind the local authorities' wish to establish the course, and its insistence on doing so in a region that really required a different form of intervention, resulted in some very angry local opposition and the collapse of the initiative. That experience taught me to respond only to a genuine request from the heart of a community that really does want to engage. Any attempt to force an outcome for whatever reason, no matter how laudable, will merely result in strife, because the fundamental basis for trust cannot be established in this way. Finally, an unexpected lesson emerged from the Second Life class during the spring semester in 2017. Glenn Loughran and I had agreed to deliver the module exclusively for the Sherkin Island Visual Arts degree students. This was the first time it was a compulsory requirement, which resulted in participation by some students who were not comfortable in the virtual space. We addressed the resistance openly in class. We addressed the resistance openly in class discussions and attempted to understand the cause. As you can imagine, there was a range of issues, but one in particular stood out. It was a reaction against the perception of Second Life as a game and the cartoonish look of the environment and the avatars. Some students were concerned that this demonstrated a lack of respect for education in general and their study in particular. Ben and I considered this concern, and indeed it was one of the reasons we selected Spatial for the master's program. The use of photogrammetry for the avatars, along with photorealistic working spaces, spoke to the serious intent of the course. We also addressed the issue in a forthcoming paper. Slide 14 shows me presenting an early version of the paper at the European Culture and Technology Lab annual conference last December. Philosopher Bernard Stiegler has written extensively on the matter, arguing that an over-reliance on smart technologies is resulting in a generalized infantilization of educational subjectivity. Education that supports the concept of grown-upness, encouraging students to take responsibility, not just for their learning, but for its context and their place in a world and on a planet that only has limited capacity for fulfilling our desires, is proposed by educator Gert Baista. It is important for the future of society that debate around the development of any new technology is fostered and encouraged. Marshall McLuhan's thinking around electric media and technology in general in the mid to late 20th century has been summarized pithily. We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. Metaverse is already shaping our future society, and its potential impact on education requires particular scrutiny. Arising from our experience developing projects and teaching in virtual worlds and VR, we believe it is important to propose some fundamental principles that need to be considered in the development of VR education. Informed by the writing of Eck, Malouf, Lisson, de Souza Santos, and others, in order to move away from the habitual thinking dominant in the Western approach to knowledge creation, opens new opportunities that can support this development. Our intention is to expand on this research as we continue to explore the ecology of the metaverse from an individual, collective, and technological perspective. Thank you very much indeed for your attention. I will now hand you back to Meryl.
Thank you, John. That was wonderful. I wish I could have taken that class. This is a time for questions. Now you can put the questions into text, or you can use voice. And regardless, Brayla and I will try to make sure that we get all the questions recognized. So are there any questions? Anybody want to lead off the questions? We have a question. Do you feel a need to control your students' use of their avatars outside of their class time? Who creates the avatars? Your staff or the student? Excellent question. Thank you.
Good question. So, firstly, no, I don't feel a need to control the students' use of their avatars. Firstly, it's important to remember that these are adults. So they're undergraduate students, but they're all over 18, so they're adults and they're independent. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, the intention of the module, or one of the learning outcomes, is for students to develop that ability to self-directance, their own learning. So I think it's very important that they engage with themselves. They engage. Somebody's got a mic open. If they could close it, please. I can't hear
Yeah,
myself.
I see that.
I believe that's Sidearm who has their mic open.
Sidearm, yeah.
Um, so it's important that students learn to fend for themselves. And indeed, a number of the early exercises that I set are for the students to go out and explore Second Life and to find some locations and write about them in a blog, and also to meet and talk to people. I did have very early on a student who had an unpleasant experience and she wanted to leave the module. So the analogy I gave to her was that once she walked outside the campus, she was likely to meet somebody who might say something unpleasant to her. And that didn't mean that she was going to leave the university. And that held sway. She stuck with it, actually, and she enjoyed the program. So I hope that answers the question.
Another question from Beth. With the use of photorealistic avatars in spatial, did it come close to the uncanny valley phenomenon? Ooh, great question.
Oh boy, did it ever come close to the uncanny valley? Very, very much so. And in fact, that was a topic of discussion. One of the interesting things, I didn't explain it perhaps fully in the talk, but the students on the MA were the same students who had taken the virtual environments module. So among them were a few who had not really liked the Second Life experience. So we were looking for something different anyway. But by that stage, we wanted to explore some different worlds. But the photographic avatar is interesting. But one of the most interesting aspects was one of the participants was a dancer. And of course, the avatars finish at the torso. They don't have any legs. So it took him quite a while to get used to the idea of representing himself without legs. Perhaps Mark Zuckerberg's latest announcement will be a relief to him.
Another question. When and where will your new paper be available?
It should be available very soon. The conference was in December. We've actually considerably rewritten it since then, and it's been published, in fact, by the new European University of Technology Academic Press. It's been published online, and I will ensure that there is a link available through VWEC for anybody who would like to read that and some of the other interesting papers. I go into more detail in that. So just one thing to finish up. I do go into some detail in the paper about what principles need to underpin VR for education. And I think that's a debate we need to have. So I'd be very happy for people to read that and respond, critique that, or suggest others. Thanks.
Okay, Shiloh asks, if more scholarly avatars had been created, would the students have felt more comfortable, in your opinion? And beyond that, what has been done to encourage the students to remain in SL and use it as a viable teaching tool and or learning tool in life?
Oh, yeah. I shouldn't overemphasize. This was just a few students who responded that way. They weren't the majority. They were a handful. And I think we've all seen that. There are some people who really take to this whole virtual environment piece, and some people who don't. Most of the students enjoy the experience, and many of them carry on and come back and do other things. But students are also students, and I've noticed they tend to be very, there's a word I use, but I can't remember it now. They tend to be quite economic in their approach. So they'll do things that earn them. Fickle is one word. I had a slightly harsher term, but it'll come back to me. they tend to be very practical. So they'll come and they'll explore something if there are credits involved. But if not, it's hard to get them to engage. I don't think, and I didn't make any attempt to make our avatars more scholarly in Second Life. And I don't think I needed to. The site field trip that always got students really engaged and changed their attitude to Second Life and indeed virtual worlds in general was the visit to Virtual Ability Island. For the first time, they got an understanding of just how important a virtual community can be to some people. Up to then, they were feeling, oh yeah, you can do this, it's interesting, but how relevant is it to me? But the honesty and the openness of the residents in Virtual Ability Island and Gentle's extraordinarily positive ability to be able to share that really has an impact on the students. They come away from that class kind of changed, and I think that's quite interesting. We sometimes, the old hands here, forget what it was like when we started off. We get used to it.
Dex asks, have you considered other VR worlds like AltSpace VR to use?
I have, and Sidearm actually has been a great supporter in inviting me into some of the other worlds, and I've attended. So ScienceSpace is one of them, Kitely. The trouble is, as I get older, and I presume you all find this, it just gets harder and harder to take on new things and learn the different ways things work. So I have to admit, I'm comfortable in Second Life. I'm used to it, and I like teaching here. But I do think Second Life still has far more to offer than any of those other virtual worlds, particularly for arts and humanities education, because really the reason I'm here is because of the community. Look around, all the people who are here this evening. There's a fantastic community of interested people in Second Life. And that's the thing I want the students to go away with, a sense of, is just because I think this is going to become more and more important in their future. And the more experience they have of that, the better. Having said that, Dex, I am open to alternatives. And as we try and expand our team in the university, I'm certainly willing, because we need to explore all opportunities and all offerings.
Okay. VWEC manager, that Athenian goddess on the first row, asked the question. You have mentioned the student having a personal responsibility. Do you feel that digital citizenship must be embedded in your course? And when in the course, or at what age level?
Great question, Val. I do. I think digital citizenship has, from the very beginning, been a key element of the module. I suppose, and it ties in with the notion of responsibility. And we try and address in the program personal responsibility, social and community responsibility, and professional responsibility. Digital citizenship is a critical issue, I think, for the new generation. I would be introducing it from primary, what we call primary school. You call it K-12, I think. I think as early as possible. Children are being introduced to digital culture and digital technology very early, and I think they need to be introduced to the notion of digital citizenship at the same time, so that they learn hand in hand. That makes it much easier than trying to address problems that might arise later because they hadn't been aware of it. So it's always easier to forestall a problem than to try and deal with its results. So I think digital citizenship, literacy, digital literacy, all of those things need to be dealt with from a very early age. The problem, of course, is that trying to get them into the school curriculum, and we have to start by teaching the teachers. So there are some of the issues. So some of that starts at home, I suppose.
Cartoons have feelings too. I love that. Do we have other questions, or did I miss a question? Let me know.
Just to respond to the cartoons having feelings, and I agree. And it was quite a shock, I have to be honest, when the students started rebelling isn't quite the word, but being very, very critical of their experience of Second Life when I was teaching that module. Um, but as I said, it was a small minority. It was about two. There was about three, I think, who weren't keen on it. And we have to allow people to have their view. But I still think that Second Life is a fantastic place to teach in. Um, and I mentioned the Zuckerberg Metaverse a moment ago. It just so happens, I don't know if people saw it, but he has announced that he's giving his avatars legs in sometime in the future. And I haven't explored his Metaverse. I'll have to go in and look at it just for critique perspective. But I noticed, in fact, that what I saw of it looks much, much less developed than Second Life. So I think Second Life is a very sophisticated environment. It's been around for a long, long time. And as far as I'm concerned, it's still the best virtual world to be teaching in. So I'm very fond of Second Life.
Here, here. Zara, you said you would like to comment?
Thank you so much. I just want to comment. First of all, thank you so much, John, for speaking. I enjoyed it immensely. So my background is in social science. I did my honours degree and I wrote a thesis in SL in 2014 on the live music community in SL. And in regards to the fickleness of your students as well, there's so much to unpack here. SL is such a massive, it's not just, I'm just trying to encompass everything in about like a minute comment. To introduce students to different communities in here. There's an incredibly vibrant visual arts community and music community. These communities also seem to be a little bit cliquish as well. Now that is a protectionist thing that they want to do. So it does take time to ingratiate yourselves into these different kinds of communities, which creates a few different problems in keeping people in here. You need to invest the amount of time in here to enjoy SL a lot. I don't know how to get younger people. I mean, I'm being a bit ageist here. I do apologise for that, but SL is a place where more mature people come. It is a place that is really for people over 18. People, and yeah, I'm trying to be very diplomatic in regards to. I think my point is to get more people in here with ideas that will accept more people in here for longer periods of time. Instead of getting students in here just for one project, is to keep them in here by creating communities that accept people a lot more. Because SL is time hungry. There is quite a lot of a learning curve. In regards to VR chat that I've been in for a little bit, there's literally no real learning curve in regard to avatar creation and things like that. And I'm just really putting it out there, different ideas that we can get a more diverse cross-section of people in here. And I noticed that when I did qualitative interviews with people in SL, due to the ethics restriction, I could only do Australian musicians, which the pool was incredibly small at that point in 2014. I want to actually rewrite my thesis again to encompass more avatar creation.
Irish musicians and American, there are lots.
Exactly. And the ethics committee said, no, you can only do Australian interviews. But they were really good anyway. I mean, I'm not denigrating them whatsoever. Yeah. But anyway, I just thought I'd comment on...
Just to address that, it's a really well-made point, Zara. And that really is the rationale behind this place where we're sitting at the moment, VWEC Eduverse, to bring educators and academic institutions and those interested in academia and education and research together with the intention of trying to provide a greater critical mass and a greater sense of engagement. So I agree with you, and it's a challenge. we just got to keep working on it.
Yeah, because people have to kind of find their own
They do.
group in
And
here.
not,
Yeah.
yeah, and not everybody will. I take your point also. The undergraduate students are a little bit young. There's lots of other things going on. Um, when I started in 2009, they were kind of blown away by it. But, gamers in particular, who are used to really sophisticated graphics and activity, find it a little bit dull. So, there are all those kinds of challenges. But I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see this wave of development is certainly far more serious. And the technology has developed to an extent that a lot more is possible. So I think we really are on the cusp of some serious VR, virtual world engagement. My hope is that, I don't know if it's going to be possible, but we would like for this to be interchangeable. So if you build something in Second Life, you could bring it into Spatial and vice versa. But that's probably beyond the bounds of possibility. But, we just have to see how it plays out.
Again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Inish, did you raise your hand? Inish Karu? Yeah, okay. Did you have a question or comment?
Well, that's interesting, Shiloh. That would be great if digital citizenship is on the new elementary curriculum.
Okay, Inish, go ahead and type in your comment or your question if you have it. I'm not hearing you if you're speaking, unfortunately. And we have until the top of the hour for any other last comments or questions.
Inish is sharing with us all that she was actually one of my students. Can't remember how many years ago. And she is somebody who has thrived and stayed on in Second Life and become involved in lots of different activities. So Zara, she is someone we would hope others will emulate.
Okay, Inish, how is your professor?
And tell the truth.
Okay. Any last any last comments? All right. Well, thank you, John. This was
Hold
wonderful.
on, I have a question.
One more question.
Okay. Am I hearing somebody?
Yes, I'm sorry. I typed it in local. I should have just came on mic. My name is Pet Carew,
Okay.
or Tigress,
Tigress, yes.
everyone. Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm curious. From your discussion today, you had a lot of information. Is it possible to have a copy of those notes, or no?
Well, the presentation has been recorded and will be available on YouTube, as I understand it, so people can look over it again. A note card has been shared with the bibliography and some references. There's a link to the module website, which has a record of every class I've delivered, and that's available for anybody to look at. And then there's a bibliography in the note card. And then finally, the paper that I referred to, from which some of this is drawn, will be available within the next few weeks, and we'll share the link for that as well.
Okay, Tigress, I'm sorry I missed you. Thank you for asking your question. We have time for additional questions on a more informal basis as we proceed here. First of all, thank you very much again, John, for a really wonderful presentation. You're invited, everybody, to gather informally on the deck at the back of the venue to ask any additional questions or to offer comments, and John will be there. Before we adjourn, please note that the next installment of the VWEC Expert Series will be on Friday, October 28th at 1 p.m. SLT, and will be a panel discussion of ways to overcome institutional barriers to using virtual worlds in education. Finally, you can find links to our in-world calendar and related helpful information in the material that I will add to the text here momentarily. And we can be reached through a variety of media. Once again, please see the text that I will insert into a nearby chat. So thank you, everybody. This was wonderful. Please feel free to stick around for a little while if you have additional questions or comments. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much indeed, Lara. And thank you, everybody. I've enjoyed it.